I sometimes wonder if the grease ever really left the pores of my hands, or if it just seeped deeper, past the skin and into the bone, becoming part of the marrow. They tell me my memory is going, that the holes in my mind are like the gaps in a picket fence. But I remember the factory floor in Sverdlovsk better than I remember the faces of my own grandchildren. That memory is not a picture. It is a rhythm. It is the Ural heavy machinery plant in the winter of '42. A cathedral of ice and iron where the air tasted of ozone and wet wool. There was a logic to the factory that the war never had. You put a raw billet of steel into the lathe, you turn the wheel, and you knew exactly what would come out. If a piston ring was off by a millimeter, you melted it down and started again. There was no malice in the metal, only geometry. We built the T-34s with a rhythmic purpose, a heartbeat of hammers and hydraulic presses that drowned out the news from the front. I was a creature of that order. I understood how a transmission mated to an engine block. I understood that if you treated the machine with respect, it would run. I was a fool. I thought I could bring that logic with me when they drafted me. I thought the laws of mechanics would protect me from the laws of chaos. But the memory of the factory floor dissolves, replaced by the suffocating reality of the present. It is July 1943. The air inside the tank is not the crisp, metallic air of the Urals. It is a thick, hot soup of diesel fumes, cordite, and the sour, pungent reek of 4 men who haven't washed in weeks. We are sitting in a steel box, buried in a field of tall grass somewhere near a village called Prokhorovka. The sun is beating down on the armor plating, turning the interior into an oven. I can feel the heat radiating through the soles of my boots, cooking my feet. My hands, resting on the steering levers, are trembling. Not much, just a fine vibration, like a guitar string that hasn't quite stopped humming. I tell myself it's the engine idling, the 12-cylinder diesel beast breathing behind my back, but I know the difference. The engine has a low, rhythmic throb. This trembling is me. It's the waiting. The waiting is always worse than the dying. When you are working, when you are driving, your mind is occupied with the oil pressure and the RPMs. When you sit, the fear creeps in. It starts in the stomach, a cold knot that tightens every time the radio crackles. I look around the fighting compartment. It's dark, lit only by the slivers of daylight cutting through the vision slits and the faint glow of the instrument panel. To my left, the hull gunner is asleep, his head lolling against the ammunition rack. How he can sleep in this heat, in this terror, I do not know. Perhaps he is already dead inside. I try to focus on the machine. My world has shrunk to this, the driver's compartment of a T-34. It is a world of hard edges and unyielding surfaces. Every time I move, I bang an elbow or a knee against cold steel. They call it a tank, a chariot of liberation. But sitting here, with the hatch closed and the heavy bolts locked tight, it doesn't feel like a chariot. It feels like a tomb, an iron sarcophagus waiting to be lowered into the earth. The fear has a specific shape for me. It is not the fear of a bullet, quick and clean. It is the fear of the hatch jamming. I saw it happen near Voronezh. A flicker of memory assaults me, unbidden, unwanted. I see a T-34 from the 2nd platoon hit in the fuel tanks. It didn't explode. It just caught fire, a lazy, rolling tongue of orange flame licking up the engine deck. I saw the crew trying to get out. I saw the commander's hatch buckle from the heat or the impact, refusing to open. I saw the hands pounding on the glass of the periscope. I heard them over the radio network. They didn't scream words. They just screamed. The sound was like a saw cutting through bone, a high-pitched, vibrating shriek that cut through the static. Then the radio went silent. That silence is what haunts me, the silence of men turning to ash inside a steel oven. I shake my head, physically trying to rattle the image loose. I need an anchor. I need the machine. I listen to the idle of our engine. It's rough, too rough. There is a sound buried deep in the mechanical cacophony. That shouldn't be there. A metallic rattle coming from the left side, near the drive sprocket. It's faint, barely audible over the diesel roar, but to a man who spent 3 years building these transmissions, it screams like a wounded animal. It sounds like a track pin working itself loose, or maybe a bearing grinding itself into dust. I key the intercom, the throat microphone scratching against my neck. "Comrade Lieutenant," I say, my voice sounding tinny and distant in my own ears. "The left track. I hear something. A rattle in the drive sprocket. We should check the tension before we move." The response is immediate and dismissive. The lieutenant is young, a boy from Moscow who reads poetry and thinks war is a grand adventure. "Volkov, you hear ghosts," he snaps. "The track is fine. We checked it at dawn. Focus on your driving. We move on the signal. But comrade lieutenant, if the pin shears, silence Volkov. Do not infect the crew with your cowardice. The machine is perfect. The spirit of the crew must match it. Cowardice. He calls it cowardice. I call it physics. A sheared pin doesn't care about your spirit. A thrown track in the middle of a kill zone doesn't care about poetry." I grip the levers tighter, my knuckles white. The rattle continues, a persistent, mocking metronome counting down the seconds to disaster. It is the sound of my ordinary world, the world of tolerances and mechanics, breaking down under the weight of this insanity. I want to open the hatch, climb out, and fix it. I want to be a mechanic again, not a soldier. I want to make things work, not drive them into destruction. But I cannot leave. I am welded to this seat by duty and by the terror of what lies outside. Then the radio erupts. Not the static of waiting, but the sharp, jagged voice of the battalion commander. It cuts through the humidity like a knife. "Steel 1 to all units. The fascists are moving. Target reference point 3. Full advance. Crush them. For the motherland." The lieutenant's voice echoes the command, shrill and breaking with adrenaline. "Driver advance full speed." I don't think. My body takes over. My foot slams onto the clutch. My hand jams the gear lever forward, and I release the brakes. The engine roars, a deafening crescendo that vibrates through my spine and obliterates the sound of the rattle. The sound of my doubt, the sound of my own breathing. The tank lurches forward violently, throwing us all against the steel walls. We are no longer men. We are a projectile. I stare into the narrow slit of the periscope, seeing nothing but a blur of green and brown, driving blind into the mouth of hell. We cross the threshold not with a fanfare, but with a grinding crash as the tank breaks cover and hits the open step. The suspension groans, slamming down hard as we traverse the uneven ground. The sensation of speed in a T-34 is deceptive. You feel every bump, every rock, every rut as a physical assault on your kidneys. The world outside the periscope ceases to be a landscape and becomes a chaotic swirl of dust and smoke. The orderly rows of the factory, the predictable geometry of the assembly line, they are gone. Here there are no straight lines. The mentor I rely on now is not the lieutenant's screaming coordinates I cannot see, nor the political officer who told us we were invincible. My mentor is the machine itself. I sink into a trance state, a survival mechanism I learned on the factory floor during the double shifts. I separate my mind from the fear and root it entirely into the mechanical feedback of the tank. I feel the terrain through the tracks. I sense the resistance in the soil. I shift gears not by thought, but by the pitch of the engine's scream. The engine is struggling against the soft earth, the temperature gauge climbing, but I coax it. We are not alone. Through the periscope I see them, dozens, hundreds of T-34s, surging forward like a tidal wave of green steel. It looks magnificent for a heartbeat, a display of industrial might that makes the chest swell. Then the horizon sparkles. It starts as tiny flashes in the distance, like camera bulbs popping at a parade. A second later the sound arrives, a rolling thunder that has nothing to do with the weather. The German Panzers, and then the Tigers. We were told they were few. We were told they were clumsy. We were lied to. To my right, flank number 412, a tank commanded by a boy I played cards with last night, is surging ahead. I watch it through the side vision block. It looks strong, indestructible. Then physics asserts its dominance. There is no sound at first, just a violent disintegration. A high-velocity shell, likely an 88, Strikes 412 just below the turret ring. The tank doesn't just stop. It is a race. A pillar of fire erupts from the hatch, blowing the turret clean off the chassis. The heavy steel turret flips in the air like a tossed coin before crashing into the mud. I don't scream. I don't gasp. My mind catalogs the event with cold detachment. It is the confirmation of every nightmare I have ever had. The sarcophagus is real. Hard left, hard left. The lieutenant is shrieking now, his poetic bravado replaced by the primal urge to live. They have the range, zigzag, Volkov. Move, I yank the left steering lever back, locking the track. The tank slews sideways, throwing up a curtain of dirt. The engine protests, the RPMs dropping dangerously low. But I slam the gear down and floor the accelerator. We are dancing with giants now. The interior of the tank is no longer silent. It is a drum, beaten by the shockwaves of explosions outside. Shrapnel patters against the hull like hail. The smell of the battlefield penetrates the filters, burning oil, burning rubber, and something sweeter, sicker. Then, the hammer of God strikes us. It feels like the tank has been kicked by a giant boot. A massive resonant rings out, a sound so loud it isn't heard. It's felt. My teeth slam together. The vision blocks shatter. The air inside the tank instantly fills with a fine gray dust. We haven't been penetrated. The shell ricocheted. But the laws of physics are cruel. The energy of the impact has to go somewhere. It travels through the armor plate and blasts off the inner layer of steel, spalling. I'm hit. It's the loader. I risk a glance back. He is clutching his face. Blood is pouring through his fingers, dark and oily in the dim light. The interior walls of the turret are scarred where razor-sharp flakes of our own armor have peeled off and flown around the cabin like shrapnel. The illusion of the fortress is shattered. The steel that is supposed to protect us is turning against us. We are sitting inside a fragmentation grenade. Load AP. Fire. Fire at the muzzle flashes. The lieutenant is ignoring the loader's screams, kicking the gunner in the shoulder. The gunner is traversing the turret, the electric motor whining in protest. I turn back to the periscope, but it's cracked. I can only see a fractured kaleidoscope of the world. Smoke, fire, the dark boxy silhouettes of the German tanks closing in. We are too close. We are in a knife fight with sledgehammers. I push the tank forward, desperate to close the distance, to get under their guns. The engine is screaming, the temperature gauge is pegged in the red. I can hear the rattle in the left track now, louder than the battle, louder than the screaming loader. The lurch is catastrophic. The tank spins violently to the left, the centrifugal force pinning me against the side of the hull. The engine revs freely, a high-pitched whine of no resistance, and then coughs. A wet, hacking cough, then silence. The vibration stops. The forward motion stops. We are a stationary target on a firing range. Track, I yell, my voice cracking. We've thrown the left track. The lieutenant stares at me, his eyes wide, reflecting the red emergency lights. He looks at the loader bleeding on the floor, then at the dead periscope. The reality of the factory floor has finally caught up with us. The machine has failed. Immobilized, the lieutenant's voice is high. Terrified, we're sitting ducks. Bail out. Bail out now. I reach for the hatch release, my hand shaking, waiting for the heat, waiting for the flames. The silence of the engine is the loudest thing in the world. The hatch above me clangs open, admitting a slice of the burning sky. Smoke pours in, acrid and thick, tasting of sulfur and roasted meat. The lieutenant is already halfway out, his boots scrabbling for purchase on the commander's seat. He looks down at me, his face a mask of soot and terror, shouting words that barely register over the din of the artillery barrage. He is leaving. They are all leaving. The loader is already gone, dragging his shattered leg over the lip of the turret, leaving a smear of bright arterial red on the white interior paint. Come on, Volkov. Move. I unbuckle my helmet. My hands are shaking, but not from fear. It is a vibration in the bone, a resonance with the dying engine beneath me. I look at the instrument panel. Oil pressure 0. Water temperature critical. The beast is dying. The lieutenant grabs my shoulder, his grip bruising. He screams that I am a fool, that the Germans are bracketed on us, that we are sitting in a coffin. He pulls at me, desperate to save a life. But I am looking at the transmission housing. I am looking at the bolts I tightened in Sverdlovsk. I shove his hand away. I tell him to go. I scream it. I tell him I can fix it. It is a lie. Or maybe a prayer. He stares at me for a fraction of a second, a lifetime in this hell, and sees something in my eyes that frightens him more than the tigers prowling the ridge. He scrambles out. The boots disappear. The sky is cut off as the hatch remains open, framing the apocalypse. I am alone. The silence inside the hull is heavy, pressing against my eardrums. Outside, the world is ending. Inside, it is just me and 30 tons of crippled steel. I slide down into the driver's seat. It is tight, claustrophobic. The air is hot enough to blister skin. I grab the heavy wrench from under the seat and the sledgehammer clamped to the hull wall. I have to go out. I have to go out into the fire to save the machine. I push myself up through the driver's hatch. The air hits me like a physical blow. Heat, noise, the screaming of men and metal. The ground around the tank is churned mud and black craters. I slide down the sloping armor to the front left fender. The track lies in the dirt like a dead snake, severed and useless. The drive sprocket is spinning freely, mocking me. I drop into the mud. It is warm and sticky. I do not look to see why. I crawl to the idler wheel. The tension mechanism is jammed with debris. I strike it with the sledgehammer. The impact jars my arms to the shoulder, sending shockwaves through my skeleton. Again, the metal rings a clear, sharp note in the cacophony of destruction. I am not a soldier now. I am back on the factory floor. The noise is just the drop hammers. The smoke is just the foundry haze. I am Dmitri, and I fix what is broken. A shell lands close enough to throw dirt into my eyes. I blink it away, mixing grit with tears. The track pin has walked out. That is the failure. A simple piece of steel, no bigger than a finger, has doomed us. I find the heavy crowbar clamped to the side of the hull. I jam it into the track links, heaving with everything I have, trying to align the heavy iron shoes. My muscles scream. My lungs burn. I am trying to lift the weight of the world. I slip in the mud, my face smashing against the cold steel of the road wheel. I taste blood. I spit it out and heave again. The links groan and shift. Closer, just a millimeter. I grab the sledgehammer with one hand, holding the crowbar with the other. My body contorted in a shape of pure desperation. I swing. The pin moves. I swing again. The hammer strikes the pin, driving it in. The rhythm takes over. Strike, strike, strike. I am sewing the tank back together with violence. Then I see them. Through the gap between the road wheels, across the scarred earth, my crew is running. They are small, dark figures stumbling toward the tree line. They look fragile, soft, and then I hear it. The low, guttural growl of a Maybach engine. Not one of ours. I look up. 50 meters away, a Panzer IV is pivoting. It is slow, methodical. A predator turning to face its prey. The turret rotates with a mechanical whine that cuts through the battle. The black hole of the muzzle is searching for me. It stops. It is looking right at me. I have a second. 1 second to drop the hammer and run. 1 second to chase the fading figures of my friends. I look at the track. The pin is flush. The machine is whole. I look at the open driver's hatch. I do not run. I scramble up the glacis plate, my boots slipping on the armor. I dive headfirst into the dark hole of the driver's compartment. I grab the handle of the hatch above me. The muzzle of the Panzer blooms with fire. I slam the heavy steel door shut. Darkness. The impact is not a sound. It is a displacement of the universe. The world turns upside down. My head slams against the periscope housing. The tank rocks violently, lifting onto one track before crashing back down. The armor screams as the shell gouges a furrow across the front plate, skipping off the sloped steel but failing to penetrate. The concussion sucks the air out of my lungs. I lie in the dark, gasping, waiting for the fire, waiting for the heat to cook me alive. There is no fire, just the ringing in my ears, loud as a church bell. I am alive. I reach out in the blackness. My hand finds the ignition switch. My fingers are numb, clumsy sausages, but they know the way. I press the starter. The compressed air hisses. The engine turns over. It is a sluggish, reluctant beast. I pump the primer. Come on, do not die on me now. You are Soviet steel. You do not die. The V-12 catches. It is a roar. A cough of black smoke that I can feel vibrating through the seat back. The beast wakes up. I rev it, watching the needles jump on the illuminated dials. Oil pressure rising. Amps charging. The sound wraps around me. A cocoon of noise that blocks out the war. I am safe here. I am part of the engine. I shift into gear. I release the steering clutch. The left track bites into the earth. The tank lurches forward, not spinning, but moving, straight, true. I do not look through the periscope. I do not want to see the burning field. I drive by feel, by the vibration of the hull. I turn the tank around, putting the thick frontal armor toward the enemy. And I drive. I drive away from the tree line where my crew ran. I drive away from the humanity that abandoned me. I drive for an hour, maybe two. The battle fades behind me, becoming a distant rumble of summer thunder. I am alone in the steppe. The sun begins to set, casting long, bloody shadows across the grass. I finally stop in a ravine, hidden from sight. I kill the engine. The silence returns, but it is different now. It is not the silence of death. It is the silence of a job finished. I climb out of the hatch. The air is cool. I slide down to the ground and walk to the front of the tank. The gouge from the German shell is deep, a jagged scar in the metal right next to my head. I run my hand over it. The steel is still warm. It held. It kept its promise. I look at my hands. They are black with oil, red with blood, shaking with adrenaline. I try to wipe them on my trousers, but the stain is too deep. It has gone into the pores. I survived, but Dmitri, the factory worker, died in that hole. The boy who believed in the collective, who believed that we are all cogs in the same great machine, he is gone. I learned the truth in the dark. When the fire comes, the bolts fly apart. The bonds of friendship snap like overstressed iron. The years move fast after that. The war ends. The parades happen. I march. I cheer. I go back to the Urals. I go back to the factory. But I am not the same. I stand in my garage now. It is quiet here. The dust motes dance in the shaft of sunlight coming through the window. My hands are wrinkled, the skin like parchment, but the grease is still there under the fingernails, etched into the lifelines. I am working on an old motorcycle, a flat twin, heavy and simple. I tighten a bolt. I feel the metal stretch slightly, reaching its yield point, holding fast. I talk to it sometimes. My wife thinks I am crazy. She brings me tea and shakes her head. She does not understand. She was not inside the steel coffin at Prokhorovka. She did not feel the universe shrink down to the tip of a sledgehammer. I never saw the lieutenant again. I never looked for him. I hope he made it to the trees. I hope he lived to have grandchildren who sit on his knee. But I do not miss him. I learned something that day. Something that separates me from the men who just marched. I learned that loneliness is the price of survival. I look up from the engine block. The camera is there, the red light blinking, capturing this old man and his ghosts. You want to know what it was like. You want the glory. There is no glory. There is only the work. In the factory, you are never alone. The brigade is everything. But in the fire, I learned a hard lesson. Men must choose to save themselves. A machine will only do what you tell it. You must trust your brothers in arms. Yes, but you must put your faith in the steel. The true victory is when you make the steel and the soul work as one. My hands are shaking again. Not from fear, from age, from the weight of the wrench. Or maybe from the vibration of an engine that stopped running 50 years ago. The harvest of my youth was ruined in that field. The wheat burned. The soil was poisoned with lead. But the machine is still running in my head. It is the only thing that never left me. This memory is a shard of glass I carry. Help me pull it out. Subscribe to keep this history alive.